But remember, JavaScript functions are really crazy. Like what we'll be discussing is pretty basic types of functions, but JavaScript has some crazy functions. Like uh, I can't seriously explain that, like that crazy JavaScript functions are. But yeah, there are so many built-in functions in JavaScript. Like you can write your own functions, or there are some functions like I have discussed in the contents, like string functions, array functions, mathematical functions. So there are so many built-in functions which can be used. And yeah, the jQuery framework, which we gonna discuss after JavaScript, is solely written on basis of functions. Like every action in jQuery is a function behind it. Okay, so yeah, functions are very useful in any programming language you take. Okay, functions. And the next thing is classes, which we'll be seeing in the, yeah, functions and classes are pretty useful. I mean, both serve the same functionality, like code reusing, whereas classes are more secure than functions. Functions are called procedural, like but those functions are object oriented. Sorry, classes are object oriented. That's these guys. The functions are procedural. So remember that classes are way secured and way powerful than functions. Yeah, but for small instances, like for quick users, it's better to use functions, because functions need not be instantiated, which we'll be discussing again. I mean, I'm just saying that the difference, the primary difference. Okay, so let's go ahead, jump in, and see what we got here in the syntax. So syntax. Okay, and I'll be telling you this. I have some naming standards for functions in JavaScript. Okay, so these are, I mean, my standards. I say universal standards. Like most of the people use these standards, naming standards for functions. So if you can remember that I have talked about these naming standards for variables in JavaScript. Like if you want to separate two words, use an underscore. They should not start with a number. They have to start with an alphabet. Give meaningful names. Like such, even for functions, okay, give meaningful names always. Always remember, give meaningful names, because it makes programming life easier. Okay, the next thing is, if you want to use two words as a function name, like just like in like variable, use camel style naming. Like suppose I want to say add two numbers. Okay, the first is small, add two numbers. You can see the first letter of every word is a capital letter. Okay, but the first one starts with small, I mean small alphabet over there. But yeah, then the rest of the words starting letters is a capital letter. So this is camel style. I mean, you see the camel hump. Okay, it's like up and down, just like a sine wave. Okay, so camel style naming. Always remember, give meaningful names, and this. And I prefer always use written value for. I mean, this is my own standard. Like always use the type 4 or at least type 2, I guess. Always use a written value, because this helps us to just store that value inside a variable. When we're calling a function, store value in variable so that you can use it further. Okay, so yeah, and I'll be saying the other standards as soon as we encounter them. But yeah, as of now, these are the standards to follow while naming the functions. And this last one is not about naming; it's a general. Alright, so now let's see the syntax. So first part is function declaration, I said. So function declaration, function keyword. This is a keyword function. That means, okay, this is a function. Okay, function keyword and a function name. Every function has a name. And then here, arguments. What are the arguments you pass? So generally they are variables. Okay, arguments are generally variables. Now here comes your piece of code or your block of code, whatever you want to reuse. Okay, then return a value, whatever the value is. And remember, return is the last statement. If you use return inside a function, that means the execution stops here. Execution stops here and goes back to the calling location. I say location, and in programming language it's pointer. Okay, so it jumps to that pointer where the function has been called. Now if whatever I write here after return, okay, whatever I write here goes unnoticed or unexecuted. I don't know, unexecuted is the right word over here, but yeah, it won't be executed. Okay, so return should always be your last statement inside a function. If not, then the rest of the things after this return goes unnoticed, like they are useless. Okay, so this is about declaration. So I just write here saying this is the declaration or definition of a function. Okay, then here I have to call this function to use it. Just declaring does not makes it useful. So I have to call this function. So how do I call this function? Okay, to call this function, all I got to say is, suppose if there is a return value, okay, if there is a return value, then there is a variable name equal to whatever the function name we have given over there. And if there are arguments, then pass your parameters. I say parameters can be values too. Okay, arguments are only variables here. So I'll just use this arguments or variables. So parameters can be variables or direct values also. I can pass values also directly. Okay, so this is how I call a function, and that is how I declare a function. So here some things are optional, right? Like the parameters, these are optional. When there are no arguments for the function, and parameters are optional. So it's the variable name. If there is no written value, then variable name is optional. So whatever I'm writing inside this caret symbols, the greater than less than symbol, yeah, that means it's optional. And coming here, even this argument is optional, because if I don't pass any parameter, then I don't need arguments. So this is optional. As such, our written value is again optional. So you give it or not, it doesn't matter. But whenever you call a function based on a written value, you have to definitely give this written. Okay, so this is optional too. Questions here?